All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Neathammer. I am a graduate student at the University of Arizona in the GIST program. My thesis project is pre-contact pathways from Walhalla Plateau to Unkar Delta. The goal of this project was to not only understand, but to quantify how pre-contact populations would travel seasonally from the plateau to the Delta. From this, a couple of questions came up. One, was there a single distinct path that they would take year after year? Also, were there aspects of the landscape that would affect travel cost? This project has a lot of information, so I did condense the geology and archaeology sections. So if you do have any questions regarding either of those, we can address those at the end, but let's jump in. All right, so here we have our project area of focus. In the bottom left corner, we have the state of Arizona showing landforms as well as larger cities. The extent indicator on the right-hand side shows a larger scale of our project area. As you can see, Walhalla Plateau is the northernmost portion, and to the southwest within the plateau is Walhalla Glades. So pre-contact populations originally used this region between 100 BCE and 500 AD for primarily hunting and gathering. As you can see from the map, this region located on top of the rim does not have a permanent water source. There are springs, seeps, and Greenland Lake, which is actually a sinkhole. However, that provides an area that is not as hospitable for long-term occupation. So this area was used, however, it wasn't utilized for long-term occupation until roughly 950 to 1050 AD, and that's when you start seeing evidence of archaeological and agricultural use within Walhalla Glades. So as we travel generally southeast, down Unkar Canyon, through Unkar Creek, we reach Unkar Delta. Unkar Delta is located within the canyon itself. The temperatures on average are higher, the precipitation on average is lower. However, Unkar Delta has something that the plateau does not, and that is a permanent water source, which is the Colorado River. Unkar Delta is located at river mile 72.5, and the Colorado River provides a 1.25 mile perimeter on the north, east, and south side of the Delta. All right, so here we have the geologic units map. This map represents our project area as well as depicts 34 different types of geological layers from the Delta to the plateau. I just wanted to show a visual representation of what a person traveling on foot would encounter from the plateau to the Delta and vice versa. This layer was also used in determining the least cost path. Here we have our elevation analysis map. So this was created using a digital elevation model from USGS. And this depicts the project area. The darker hues represent lower elevations, like Unkar Delta, and the lighter hues represent higher elevations like Walhalla Plateau. There is roughly a 1,950 foot elevation gain from the Delta to the plateau. All right, so before we jump into more of the archaeological context of this project, I just wanted to kind of discuss Esri's steps for georeferencing. So to prepare, I found site location maps for Unkar Delta and Unkar Creek and Walhalla Plateau. They primarily were from two books that were published during the 1980s. These maps that were within the book were hand-drawn site location maps, which I actually think is really important. Not only are these maps public, but they give approximate site locations. So it does provide a level of security for the culture, the sensitivity of the sites themselves, and prevents any vandalism or looting that could be associated with mapping these locations. So I scanned in the maps and loaded them into ArcGIS Pro. I adjusted them using control points, and I assigned a coordinate system to the georeference maps, and then reviewed them for accuracy, then used different symbology between Umpqua Delta and Umpqua Canyon as far as colors are concerned to plot the site locations. And then we saved and closed. Unfortunately, due to time, I was not able to map the sites of Walhalla Plateau because it is such a vast region. So that would be something I would love to follow up with, but let's look at the results. So here are the sites of Umpqua Delta. As you can see on the left, we have our project overview map, and on the right, the extent indicator is highlighting a larger scale of Umpqua Delta. The sites are represented by green points. And as you can see, there's a higher site density located on the north and the eastern portions, with a couple outliers on the dunes to the south. So Umpqua Delta was occupied 3 separate times between 1050 AD and 1150 AD. Primarily, these sites are long-term occupation. There is masonry evidence to assign them to certain phases, as well as ceramic evidence. And there were 2 short-term occupations on either end of those date ranges. However, they were short and they didn't provide any significant archaeological evidence besides ceramic samples. So the population that came in before 1050 AD, the ceramic samples were associated with the Kohonina people, and the occupation that was on the latter half of those date ranges, the ceramic samples associated them with the Hopi. That was thought to be more associated with cultural trade within the area, though. All right, so here we have our sites of Umpqua Canyon. On the left, we have our project overview. On the right, we have the extent indicator showing a larger scale of the canyon itself. So the sites are represented by the pink points. As you can see, they do have a trajectory going in a northwestern transition, and they are in clusters. Also, I wanted to point out a lot of these sites are located on cliffs and ridges, as well as in the creek bed, but a lot of these sites were actually temporary camps, and they were food storage or granaries. So this area was thought to be the route of travel, not necessarily for long-term occupation, and also used for raw material procurement. All right, so this is my assumptions of travel. I wanted to create this map just to kind of give an overview based on the environment and the archaeological context of this project of what the assumed route would be, which is represented by the pink line. So it travels through Umpqua Canyon, generally following the creek bed, and then just over halfway it forks. So depending on your destination of travel, you can go either direction. All right, so here we have my model builder process for the least cost path. So as you can see, I used the USGS DEM layer to create a slope, and the output from that, I reclassified the slope values from 0 to 90 degrees with values ranging from 0 to 18. The bottom here, I have the geologic units feature, which I converted to a raster layer. From the raster, I made a copy and put that into raster calculator to create a conditional geology output. Using both of those, I input that into raster calculator to create a new weighted surfaces output, which I assigned 85% to the new slope and 15% to the geology. From there, I used the new weighted surfaces and the start point of Umpqua Delta into the cost distance, which created a new cost distance. We added a backlink and then added the endpoint of Walhalla Plateau to get our least cost path, and these were the results. All right, and these are just the steps that I had mentioned in the model builder process. All right, so here is our slope map. The including terrain labels. So the darker hues are more steep slope, the lighter hues are more gentle slope. And as you can see from this map, there is a low slope path that follows the creek all the way up to the plateau. And there are some offshoots from that as well, but you can definitely see that the areas surrounding the creek and the canyon are very, very steep. So there's really only a few good routes that you can take. All right, so this was the least cost path results map, which is represented by the black line. And I was a little surprised by this. However, it does follow the assumed route map pretty closely. As you can see, it goes through Uncar Canyon. It does fork just over halfway, depending on the destination. However, there is a spot where it diverts from the canyon and goes up and over this terrace and then rejoins the canyon, which I thought was really fascinating. So kind of raised a couple more questions. Is this another route that they would take? Is this an alternative? Another interesting fact is that right at the point where it joins, goes over the terrace and then joins the creek and the canyon again, there's a site there. So was this an access route to get to the site specifically? Yeah, kind of an interesting output of the least cost path. All right, so I wanted to create another visualization for the least cost path. So I created a 3D map. And I really like looking at the results this way because you can really get a feel for the terrain of this project area. So as you can see, the black line for the least cost path jumps up onto that terrace, cuts across, and then rejoins, and you can follow the creek bed up to the point where you can, depending on your destination, choose different directions. All right, so this is the discussion. There was one distinct path that could be expanded upon, and the least cost path that was generated for the project, I think could definitely lead to further analysis just for this area in general. And the only way to really know if the path that was generated is one safe and accurate is to put boots on the ground, go hike, go check it out. I would love to do a follow-up and investigate on that. I would also like to expand the research area to include Wotan's Throne and Sky Island. These are located just outside of our project area. However, they are isolated locations with a very precarious environment to get to the sites. And there are high site densities located on both of these locations. For this project, I included the Colorado River as a barrier because at one point when I was generating the least cost path, it was trying to cross the Colorado River at a rapid and then jump back over the river to go up the slope. So it did take a little bit of an adjustment, but I do think it would be interesting if the river was used as an access route instead of a barrier, because from the ceramic samples that I mentioned earlier that were associated with the Kohonina people, that would give the populations from the South Rim an opportunity to access the Delta. And so that would be kind of interesting to find out origins for that. All right, these are my conclusions. There's so much more to be learned. I can't wait to continue this project, continue mapping it, go investigate, find out more about it. The least cost path could easily be expanded upon as we saw through the maps that were generated. And there was one distinct route. However, there were many offshoots. So this could lead to, connecting paths throughout the canyon. And predictive modeling, just in general, I think is one of the best tools for archaeologists. It makes life so much easier. It gives better visual representation and more accurate. All right, these are my references. And do you have any questions?